The woman kneeling in his potato field had green skin the color of summer moss and tusks that caught the morning light like polished ivory. And Lucas Vance knew immediately that helping her would probably get him killed. She was digging in the dirt with her bare hands, frantic and wild, her dark hair matted with mud and what looked like dried blood. Her clothes, once fine judging by the remnants of embroidery on the torn sleeves, hung in tatters around her powerful frame. She did not notice him at first, too consumed by whatever desperate task drove her to claw at the earth between his carefully tended rows. Lucas set down his water bucket slowly, making no sudden movements. He had been a soldier once, before the war took his brother and his faith in the cause. He knew how to read danger, and this woman radiated it like heat from a forge. But she also radiated something else: fear, raw, animal terror that made his chest tighten with unwanted sympathy. "You are on private land," he said quietly, keeping his voice level and calm. She spun toward him with a speed that would have been impressive if it were not so clearly born of panic. Her eyes were amber, bright and wild, and for a moment he thought she might bolt like a cornered deer. Instead, she straightened slowly, dirt falling from her fingers, and he saw the way her whole body trembled with exhaustion. "I mean no harm," she said, and her voice was deeper than he expected, rough but strangely refined. "I only need to bury something, then I will go." Lucas studied her for a long moment. His farmhouse sat 3 miles from the nearest village, tucked into the foothills where the frontier blurred into wilderness. He had chosen this isolation deliberately after the war, wanting nothing more than to tend his land and be left alone. The last thing he needed was to get involved with an orc woman who looked like she had fled from something terrible. But the soldier in him, the part that had never quite died despite his best efforts, noted the bruises on her arms, the way she favored her left side, the desperation in her eyes that spoke of something beyond simple theft or violence. "What are you burying?" he asked. She hesitated, her jaw working as if she were physically chewing on the decision to trust him. Finally, she reached into what remained of her shirt and pulled out something wrapped in oiled cloth. She did not unwrap it, but Lucas caught a glimpse of gold, a flash of jewels that had no business being on his potato field on a Wednesday morning. "Something that will get me killed if they find it on me," she said flatly. "Something that will get anyone killed who helps me hide it." Lucas should have walked away, should have gone back to his house, barred the door, and pretended he had seen nothing. Instead, he found himself saying, "The old stone well behind the barn. It dried up years ago, but the bottom is solid. Nobody would think to look there." The orc woman stared at him as if he had just offered her a kingdom instead of a hiding place. "Why would you help me?" "I have no idea," Lucas admitted, and it was the truth. "But you look like you are about to collapse, and I have spent too many years watching people die. Come on. Quickly, before anyone sees you from the road." She followed him with the cautious steps of someone who expected a trap at every turn. Lucas led her past his small barn, where his 2 dairy cows regarded them with placid disinterest, to the crumbling well that his grandfather had built half a century ago. He hauled up the wooden cover and peered down into the darkness. 40 feet down," he said. "I have rope if you need it." "I do not," she said, and before he could protest, she had swung herself over the edge and was climbing down the ancient stones with the grace of someone who had scaled far worse. He heard the soft thud of her landing, then silence. A moment later, her voice echoed up. "It is done." She climbed back up even faster than she had descended, hauling herself over the edge with arms that trembled from more than exertion. Up close, Lucas could see the fever flush on her cheeks, the way her breathing came too shallow and quick. "You are injured," he said. "I will manage." But as she said it, she swayed on her feet, Lucas caught her elbow, steadying her, and felt the heat radiating from her skin even through the torn fabric. "You have an infection. When was the last time you ate?" "2 days ago. Maybe 3. She pulled away from his touch, but there was no real strength behind it. "I should go. You have already done more than anyone would, more than you should have." "Where exactly are you planning to go?" Lucas asked, looking her over with the practiced eye of someone who had seen too many soldiers try to march on with mortal wounds. "You will be dead by nightfall if that fever gets worse." She met his eyes, and he saw the moment she accepted the truth of his words. "Then I will die away from here so I do not bring trouble to your door." "Too late for that," Lucas said, making a decision that he knew he would probably regret. "If anyone saw you on my land, the trouble is already here. You might as well come inside. Let me look at that wound and eat something before you decide to go die somewhere else." The orc woman opened her mouth to argue, then closed it again. The fight seemed to drain out of her all at once, leaving only bone-deep exhaustion. "I am called Talia," she said quietly. "Lucas," he replied. "Now come on before you pass out in my yard." His farmhouse was small but well kept, the kind of place that spoke of a man who took pride in his work even if he had no one to share it with. Talia moved through the door like she expected it to be a trap, her eyes cataloging every window, every exit, every potential weapon. Lucas pretended not to notice and busied himself stoking the fire and filling a pot with water. "Sit," he said, pointing to the sturdy chair near the hearth. "Let me see the wound." Talia lowered herself into the chair with visible reluctance, and Lucas knelt beside her. The injury was on her side, hidden beneath the tattered remains of her shirt. When she lifted the fabric, he had to suppress a grimace. The wound was deep, a slash that looked like it had come from a blade, and the edges were red and inflamed. "This needs to be cleaned and stitched," he said. "I know." Her voice was tight with pain. "Do you have the supplies?" "I do." Lucas rose and went to the cupboard where he kept his medical kit, another relic from his soldier days. He had hoped never to use it again, but life had a way of mocking such hopes. "This is going to hurt." "Everything hurts," Talia said with a bitter laugh. "Do what you must." Lucas worked quickly and efficiently, cleaning the wound with boiled water and whiskey that made Talia hiss through her teeth, but otherwise remained still as stone. She was tougher than most men he had known, and he found himself grudgingly impressed. When he began stitching, she gripped the arms of the chair hard enough that the wood creaked, but she did not cry out. "Who did this to you?" he asked as he worked, more to distract her than because he expected an answer. "People who want something I no longer have," she said through clenched teeth. "People who will not stop looking until they find it or find me dead. The thing you buried in my well." "Yes." Lucas tied off the last stitch and sat back, studying her face. "You could tell me what it is. Might help me know what kind of trouble is heading my way." Talia met his eyes, and he saw the war playing out behind them. Trust versus survival, truth versus safety. Finally, she sighed. "A crown," she said quietly. "The crown of the Thornwood clan, to be specific. My clan." Lucas felt his eyebrows rise despite himself. "You are royalty." "I was," Talia corrected, "until I did something unforgivable and became hunted instead." She did not elaborate, and Lucas did not push. He had his own things he did not like to talk about. Instead, he stood and ladled soup into a bowl, thick vegetable stew he had made 2 days ago. He handed it to her and watched as she stared at it like she could not quite believe it was real. "Eat," he said gently. "Then you can sleep. We will figure out the rest later." Talia ate slowly at first, then with increasing hunger, scraping the bowl clean and accepting a second helping without protest. By the time she finished, her eyes were drooping, the fever and exhaustion finally winning the battle against her will to stay alert. "The bed is through there," Lucas said, pointing to his small bedroom. "Take it, I will sleep out here." "I cannot take your bed," Talia protested, but the words were slurred with fatigue. "You can and you will," Lucas said firmly. "You need proper rest to fight that infection. Now go before you fall over." She did not have the strength to argue further. She stumbled toward the bedroom and collapsed onto the narrow bed, still fully dressed, asleep before her head fully hit the pillow. Lucas stood in the doorway for a moment, watching her breathe, wondering what in all the hells he had just gotten himself into. Then he barred the door, checked the windows, and settled into his chair with his grandfather's old sword across his lap. If trouble came looking for an orc princess, he would at least hear it coming. The days that followed fell into an uneasy rhythm. Talia's fever broke on the second night, leaving her weak but clear-headed. She spent most of her time sleeping or sitting by the fire, watching Lucas with those sharp amber eyes as he went about his daily tasks. He brought in eggs from the chickens, milked the cows, tended the garden, and tried to pretend his life had not been turned completely upside down. On the fourth day, Talia was strong enough to stand without swaying, and Lucas found her examining the dried herbs hanging from his rafters with the intensity of a scholar studying ancient texts. "You know medicine," she observed. "Field medicine," Lucas corrected, pulling down a bunch of sage to replenish the jar. "Nothing fancy, just enough to keep soldiers alive until they could see a real healer. You were in the war." It was not a question, but Lucas nodded anyway. 5 years. Infantry, then reconnaissance. "I got out when my brother did not come back from the Battle of Ashford Ridge." "I am sorry," Talia said, and the sincerity in her voice surprised him. "It was 3 years ago," Lucas said with a shrug that did not quite hide the old pain. "I came here to get away from all of it. Built a life where nobody asks questions and nothing ever happens. And then I showed up and ruined it," Talia said wryly. "You did complicate things," Lucas agreed, but there was no real anger in his words. "How is the wound?" "Better. You did good work." She paused, then added quietly, "Thank you for all of this. Most humans would have turned me in or killed me themselves." "Most humans are idiots," Lucas said flatly. "Besides, I spent enough time in the war to know that the people we were told were monsters were usually just people trying to survive, same as us." Talia studied him with an expression he could not quite read. "You are an unusual man, Lucas Vance. So I have been told." He handed her a paring knife and a basket of potatoes. "If you are feeling up to it, these need peeling. Dinner does not make itself." She took the knife and basket without protest, settling at his small kitchen table with the careful movements of someone still healing. They worked in comfortable silence for a while, Lucas preparing a pot roast while Talia peeled potatoes with surprising skill. "You know your way around a kitchen," Lucas observed. "I was not always a princess," Talia said with a slight smile. "My mother believed that all her children should know how to fend for themselves. Cooking, cleaning, fighting, tracking. She said a leader who could not survive alone had no business leading others. Your mother sounds wise. She was." Past tense laden with old grief. Lucas did not pry, but Talia continued anyway, as if the words had been building up behind a dam and were finally breaking through. "She died when I was 16, assassinated by a rival clan. My father followed her 3 years later. The crown passed to me, and with it all the enemies they had made, all the alliances they had forged, all the promises they had sworn." "That is a heavy burden for anyone," Lucas said. "I wore it for 2 years." Talia's hand stilled on the potatoes, her gaze distant. 2 years of politics and power plays and pretending to be something I was not sure I could be, and then I made the mistake that cost me everything." She fell silent again, and this time Lucas sensed she was done sharing. He let it rest, focusing on seasoning the roast and getting it into the oven. They ate dinner together as the sun set, painting the kitchen in warm gold light, and Lucas found himself enjoying the company more than he wanted to admit. It had been a long time since he had shared a meal with someone. A long time since his home had felt like more than just a place to sleep between chores. That night, as Lucas lay on the floor near the dying fire, wrapped in blankets that smelled faintly of lavender, he stared at the ceiling and tried to convince himself that this was temporary. That Talia would heal and leave, taking her crown and her troubles with her, and his life would return to its quiet predictability. He was still trying to believe it when he finally fell asleep. The trouble arrived on the 8th day, in the form of 3 armed men on horseback, who rode up Lucas's lane with the confidence of people who expected no resistance. Lucas saw them coming from the garden where he was pulling weeds, and his soldier instincts kicked in immediately. He stood slowly, brushing dirt from his hands, and called toward the house in a voice that sounded casual but carried a clear warning. "Talia, could you bring me some water?" She appeared in the doorway a moment later, took one look at the approaching riders, and vanished back inside without a word. Lucas allowed himself a small smile. The woman learned fast. The riders pulled up at the edge of his property, eyeing the farmhouse with obvious suspicion. Their leader was a tall man with a scar across his cheek and the kind of eyes that had seen too much violence and enjoyed it too much. "You the owner here?" the scarred man called out. "I am," Lucas replied, walking forward but stopping well short of them. "Lucas Vance." "What can I do for you gentlemen?" "We are looking for someone," the man said. "An orc woman, green skin, tusks, probably injured. She is wanted for theft and murder." Lucas kept his expression carefully neutral. "I have not seen anyone like that. I am pretty isolated out here." "Mind if we look around?" It was not really a question. "I do mind, actually," Lucas said pleasantly. "This is private property, and unless you have some official authority, I would prefer you stay where you are." The scarred man's eyes narrowed. "We represent the interests of certain parties who are willing to pay very well for information. 100 gold crowns for anyone who helps us find her." "That is generous," Lucas acknowledged. "But I cannot help you. I have not seen any orcs around here." The 3 men exchanged glances, and Lucas could see them weighing their options. He was one man, alone on a frontier farm. They could easily overpower him if they wanted to search anyway. But something in his stance, in the way he held himself, made them reconsider. The posture of a trained fighter never quite went away. "You sure about that?" the scarred man pressed. "Because if we find out you have been lying, things could go very badly for you." "I am sure," Lucas said, his voice hardening slightly. "Now, unless you have actual business with me, I would appreciate it if you moved along. I have work to do." For a long moment the standoff held. Then the scarred man smiled, but it did not reach his eyes. "We will be checking with your neighbors. If anyone has seen anything unusual, we will hear about it." "You do that," Lucas said. They turned their horses and rode away, kicking up dust that hung in the still air like a threat. Lucas waited until they were out of sight before he allowed himself to relax. Then he walked quickly back to the house. Talia was standing just inside the door, his grandfather's sword in her hands. "I heard," she said. "I should go tonight, before they come back with more men." "They will be watching the roads," Lucas said. "And you are not healed enough to survive in the wilderness with hunters on your trail." "Then what do you suggest?" Talia demanded, and he could hear the fear beneath the anger. "Wait here until they return with an army. Let them kill you for helping me." Lucas was quiet for a moment, thinking. His military mind turned over the problem, examining angles and possibilities. "There is another option," he said slowly. It is risky, but it might work. What option? Marriage, Lucas said. Talia stared at him. What? If we were married, you would have legal protection as my wife, Lucas explained. The law says a man's wife cannot be taken from his property without cause and proper trial. It would buy us time at least, make it harder for them to just take you. That is insane, Talia said flatly. You would bind yourself to me legally just to protect me from bounty hunters. You have a better idea. She did not, and they both knew it. Talia set down the sword and sank into a chair, her expression torn between hope and disbelief. Why would you do this? She asked quietly. You do not know me. You do not owe me anything. Lucas sat down across from her, trying to find the words for feelings he did not fully understand himself. When I came back from the war, I was empty, he said finally. I had seen too much death, too much cruelty. I came here to hide from all of it. And then you showed up, desperate and terrified, and something in me woke up again. Something that remembered what it felt like to fight for something that mattered. He met her eyes, willing her to understand. I am not asking you to love me. I am not even asking you to stay forever. But right now, you need protection, and I can give you that. So let me. Talia was silent for a long time, her amber eyes searching his face as if trying to read the truth written there. You barely know me, she said again, but her voice was softer now. Then tell me something true, Lucas said. Tell me what you did that made you run. She flinched as if he had struck her, but then she took a deep breath and spoke. I fell in love, she said quietly, with a human man, a diplomat who came to negotiate a trade agreement between our peoples. It was forbidden, of course. Orcs and humans do not mix, not in the eyes of either society. But we did not care. We were going to run away together, start a new life somewhere far from politics and prejudice. Her voice cracked, and Lucas saw the old pain rising to the surface. But someone found out. My own cousin who wanted the crown for himself. He killed my love and framed me for it. Said I had murdered a human diplomat to start a war between our peoples. The clan believed him. They wanted me dead or disgraced and the crown for themselves. So I took the only thing they really cared about and I ran. The crown, Lucas said. The crown, Talia agreed. It is more than just a symbol. It is ancient, blessed by the old spirits, imbued with power that connects the wearer to the land itself. Without it, no one can truly rule the Thornwood clan. I took it to keep it from my cousin's hands, even if it meant I could never wear it again. Lucas absorbed this, seeing her clearly for the first time. Not a thief or a criminal, but someone who had lost everything trying to hold onto love and honor. That was brave, he said. It was stupid, Talia countered bitterly. I should have fought, should have exposed my cousin's lies. Instead, I ran, and now I am a fugitive being hunted by my own people and by human bounty hunters who think I am a murderer. You are alive, Lucas said firmly. That is not nothing. And if you marry me, you stay alive. We figure out the rest as we go. Talia looked at him for a long moment, and Lucas saw the moment she decided to trust him. Really trust him, not just with her safety but with her future. All right, she said quietly. I will marry you, Lucas Vance. But know this. I come with enemies and danger and a past that will never stop hunting me. Are you certain you want that? I am certain I want to help you, Lucas said. The rest, we will face together. The village priest was a practical man named Father Morris, who had seen enough of the world to not be shocked by much. When Lucas showed up at his door 3 days later with Talia at his side, dressed in a simple blue dress Lucas had bought from the seamstress, Father Morris merely raised an eyebrow and invited them inside. Marriage, is it? He said, looking between them with shrewd eyes. That is quite a step, Lucas. I thought you were determined to live alone out there forever. Plans change, Lucas said simply. Father Morris turned to Talia. And you, miss, you understand what you are agreeing to. Marriage is a sacred bond not to be entered into lightly. I understand, Talia said, her voice steady despite the nervous tension Lucas could feel radiating from her. Lucas has offered me protection and a home. I intend to honor that gift with loyalty and partnership. The priest studied her for a moment longer, then nodded slowly. Very well. I will need witnesses, of course, and there is a waiting period of 1 week by law to ensure you are both certain. Can the waiting period be waived? Lucas asked. There are circumstances that make time important. Father Morris's expression sharpened. What kind of circumstances? The kind where people are looking for my bride, and not with good intentions, Lucas said honestly. He had learned long ago that Father Morris respected truth more than flattery. The priest sighed and rubbed his temples. You are asking me to marry you to a woman who is being hunted. Lucas, do you understand the position this puts me in? I do, Lucas said. And I would not ask if there were any other way. But the law protects a wife differently than a stranger. You know that as well as I do. Father Morris looked at Talia again, really looked at her, seeing past the green skin and tusks to the frightened woman beneath. Are you in danger? He asked her directly. Yes, Talia said, but not from Lucas. He has shown me only kindness. The priest was quiet for a long moment, then he stood and walked to his bookshelf. He pulled down a heavy volume and flipped through it. There is a provision, he said slowly, for emergency marriages in cases of immediate danger or hardship. It requires a fee to the church and a sworn statement from both parties that they enter willingly and with full understanding. We can do that, Lucas said quickly. Then we will do it now, Father Morris said. Wait here while I fetch witnesses. He left them alone in the small chapel and Lucas turned to Talia. Last chance to change your mind, he said softly. I could say the same to you, Talia replied. This is madness, you know. We have known each other for barely 2 weeks. I know. Lucas took her hand, surprised by how naturally it fit in his. But it feels right. Does that make any sense? No, Talia said, but I feel it too. Father Morris returned with 2 witnesses, an elderly couple from the village who looked curious but not unkind. The ceremony was simple and brief. Nothing like the elaborate rituals Lucas imagined Orc royalty was accustomed to. But when Father Morris asked if he would take Talia as his wife, to honor and protect her all his days, Lucas spoke his vow with absolute certainty. And when Talia spoke hers, her voice strong and clear in the quiet chapel, Lucas felt something shift inside him. Something that felt terrifyingly like hope. They signed the register, accepted the priest's blessing, and walked out into the afternoon sun as husband and wife. The elderly couple offered congratulations and disappeared quickly, and Father Morris gripped Lucas's shoulder with surprising strength. Protect her, the priest said quietly, and may the Lord watch over you both. Thank you, Father, Lucas said. They walked back to the farm in silence, both processing what they had just done. It was not until they were safely inside, the door barred behind them, that Talia finally spoke. I am sorry you had to do this, she said. I am not, Lucas replied and realized he meant it. I know this started as protection, but it does not have to stay that way. We can make this a real partnership, Talia. A real marriage if you want. She looked at him with those amber eyes that seemed to see straight through him. What are you saying? I am saying that I like having you here, Lucas said, the words coming easier than he expected. I like cooking with you and talking with you and not being alone anymore. I am saying that if you are willing to try, I would like to see if this could become something more than just a legal arrangement. Talia was quiet for so long that Lucas began to think he had overstepped. Then she crossed the room and took his hands in hers. I lost someone I loved, she said quietly. "I did not think I would ever want to risk that kind of pain again, but you make me feel safe, Lucas. You make me feel like maybe I could have a life again instead of just survival." "Then let us try," Lucas said. "No promises except honesty. We build something together, one day at a time." "One day at a time," Talia agreed, and when she smiled, it transformed her entire face. That night, Lucas slept in his own bed for the first time since Talia had arrived, but he was not alone. They lay beside each other fully clothed, careful not to touch, both aware that they were crossing a threshold that could not be uncrossed. But as the moon rose outside the window and cast silver light across the quilts, Lucas felt Talia's hand find his in the darkness. He squeezed gently, and she squeezed back, and in that simple gesture was more intimacy than he had known in years. The weeks that followed were a strange dance of domesticity and growing affection. Talia healed fully, her strength returning until she was helping Lucas with the heavy work around the farm. She was stronger than him by a fair margin, able to lift feed sacks that would have made him strain, and she moved with a warrior's grace that spoke of extensive training. Lucas taught her the rhythms of farm life, showed her how to coax the chickens into laying more eggs and how to tell when the cows were ready for milking. Talia taught him things too, knowledge she had learned as a princess and a leader. She knew herbs he had never heard of, could track game through the forest with uncanny skill, and had a gift for strategy that occasionally terrified him with its implications. They talked as they worked, sharing stories from their pasts. Lucas told her about growing up on a different farm, about his brother's terrible jokes and his mother's singing. Talia told him about life in the Thornwood clan, about festivals and hunts, and the weight of expectation that had rested on her shoulders from childhood. Slowly, carefully, they learned each other. One evening, about a month after their wedding, Lucas was making dinner when he felt Talia's presence behind him. She had gotten closer over the weeks, more comfortable with casual touch. Now she rested her hand on his shoulder, watching him chop vegetables with the focus he brought to every task. "You are very precise," she observed. "Old habit," Lucas said. "In the army, you learn to do things right the first time or suffer for it." "It must have been hard," Talia said quietly. "The war." Lucas paused, the knife still on the cutting board. He had avoided talking about the worst parts, keeping his stories light and focused on the camaraderie rather than the horror. But Talia deserved better than edited versions. "It was hell," he said simply. "We were told we were fighting for something noble for our kingdom and our people. But most of the time we were just trying not to die. And when my brother fell at Ashford Ridge, I realized I did not even know what we were fighting for anymore. So I left." "Do you regret it?" Talia asked. "Leaving?" "Never," Lucas said firmly. "I regret that it took losing my brother to make me see clearly, but leaving, that was the best decision I ever made. Well, second best. What is the first?" But Talia's voice held a smile as if she already knew. "Meeting you," Lucas said, turning to face her. "Marrying you. All of it." Talia's expression softened, and she reached up to touch his face, her rough palm gentle against his cheek. "I never thought I would be happy again," she said quietly. "I thought I had used up my chance at happiness and would spend the rest of my life running and hiding. But you make me feel like maybe I deserve another chance." "You do deserve it," Lucas said, covering her hand with his. "You deserve everything good in the world, Talia." She kissed him then, a gentle press of lips that sent warmth flooding through his entire body. Lucas pulled her closer, deepening the kiss, and felt her respond with a passion that matched his own. When they finally broke apart, both breathing hard, Talia rested her forehead against his. "I am falling in love with you," she whispered. "I did not want to, I tried not to, but I am." "Good," Lucas said, his heart hammering against his ribs. Because I fell in love with you weeks ago and have been terrified to say it." They stood there in the kitchen, wrapped in each other's arms while the dinner simmered on the stove and the evening light faded to dusk. It was not dramatic or earth-shattering, but it felt right in a way Lucas had never experienced before. Like coming home after a long journey to find everything exactly as it should be. That night, they made love for the first time, a tender exploration that was equal parts awkward and amazing. Talia was surprisingly shy for someone so confident in other areas, and Lucas found himself charmed by the vulnerability she showed him. Afterward, they lay tangled in the sheets, her head on his chest, listening to his heartbeat slow. "I wish we could stay like this forever," Talia murmured. "Just us, in this house with the rest of the world far away. We will figure out how to make that happen," Lucas promised, running his fingers through her hair. "I did not marry you just to lose you to whatever is hunting you." Talia tilted her head to look at him, her amber eyes serious. "You know they will come eventually. My cousin or the bounty hunters or both. We cannot hide here forever." "Then we will face them when they come," Lucas said, "together." But the universe had its own timeline and it did not wait for them to be ready. The attack came on a cool autumn morning when the leaves were just beginning to turn gold and red. Lucas was in the barn, mucking out the stalls, when he heard Talia's shout of warning from the house. He dropped the pitchfork and ran, grabbing his sword from where it hung by the door. 5 men were surrounding the house, armed and armored. Lucas recognized the scarred man from before, along with 4 others who had the hard look of professional fighters. Behind them, standing near a black horse, was an orc man with skin a darker green than Talia's and eyes that burned with hatred. "Lucas Vance," the scarred man called out. "We have a warrant for the arrest of the orc woman known as Talia Thornwood, wanted for murder and theft. Surrender her now and we will not harm you." "She is my wife," Lucas called back, taking up position on the porch with his sword drawn. "Protected by law, you cannot take her without a trial." The orc man laughed, a harsh sound that set Lucas's teeth on edge. "Your human laws mean nothing to me, farmer. That woman stole what belongs to my clan. She will return it and face justice, or she will die. Your choice." Lucas did not need to guess who this was. Talia's cousin, the one who had killed her love and stolen her throne. The one who had sent her running with a crown and a target on her back. "She is not going anywhere with you," Lucas said flatly. The cousin's expression darkened. "Then you will die protecting a murderer. How noble!" He gestured, and the 5 armed men advanced. Lucas braced himself, his soldier training flooding back in a rush of muscle memory and cold calculation. 5 against 1 were not good odds, but he had faced worse. Then the door behind him opened, and Talia stepped out. She was magnificent, dressed in simple farm clothes but carrying herself like the warrior princess she had been. She held Lucas's grandfather's sword in one hand and her own fierce determination in her eyes. "I will not let you die for me," she said to Lucas, her voice low and fierce. "Too bad," Lucas replied, "because I am not letting you go with him." They stood side by side as the attackers came, and Lucas felt a savage joy rise in his chest. This was what he had been missing in his peaceful farmer's life, not the violence itself, but the clarity of purpose. The absolute certainty that he was fighting for something that mattered. The first man to reach the porch learned that Lucas had not forgotten how to use a sword. Lucas disarmed him with 3 quick moves and sent him sprawling with a kick to the chest. Talia met the second attacker with a ferocity that would have been beautiful if it were not so deadly. Her blade dancing in patterns Lucas recognized from professional military training. But 3 more were coming, and the scarred leader hung back with a crossbow aimed at Talia's heart. Lucas threw himself between them just as the bolt flew. The impact felt like being kicked by a mule, a white-hot burst of pain in his shoulder that sent him staggering. But the bolt had not reached Talia, and that was all that mattered. He heard her scream his name, felt her arm wrap around him to keep him from falling. The attackers hesitated, and in that moment of confusion, a new sound cut through the chaos. Hoofbeats, many of them, coming fast up the lane. Lucas's vision was swimming, but he saw them arrive. A dozen riders, orcs all, wearing the colors of the Thornwood clan. At their head was an orc woman with gray streaked hair and eyes like Talia's, fierce and proud. "Stand down," she commanded, her voice carrying the weight of absolute authority. The attackers froze. Even Talia's cousin went pale, his arrogance crumbling in the face of this new arrival. "Mother," Talia whispered, and Lucas felt her trembling against him. The older orc woman dismounted and walked forward with measured steps. She looked at the scene before her, at Lucas bleeding on the porch with Talia holding him up, at her nephew standing with his mercenaries, and her expression went cold with fury. "I received word of your treachery, nephew," she said, her voice deadly quiet. "Word that you murdered a human diplomat and framed my daughter for it. Word that you sought the crown through lies and violence rather than earning it through honor." "Aunt, I can explain," the cousin started. "Silence," she snapped, and he flinched. She turned to Talia, and her expression softened fractionally. "I am sorry, daughter. I should have believed you. I should have investigated rather than accepting easy lies. But I am here now, and I am making it right." "How?" Talia asked, her voice shaking. "How can you make any of this right?" "Your cousin has been stripped of all rank and title," her mother said. "The clan has voted. He will face trial for murder and conspiracy. As for you, the charges have been dropped. You are welcome to return home, to reclaim your crown and your place as our leader." Lucas felt Talia stiffen against him, felt the war playing out inside her. The crown, the power, the life she had been born to, all of it being offered back to her. And all she had to do was leave the simple farm and the human man who loved her. "I cannot," Talia said quietly. Her mother blinked. "Cannot? I am married," Talia said, her grip on Lucas tightening. "To this man who saved my life and gave me a home when I had nothing. I am bound to him by law and by love, and I will not abandon him." "The clan needs you," her mother said, but her tone was more pleading now than commanding. "You are our rightful leader." "The clan needs a leader," Talia corrected, "but it does not have to be me. There are others who can wear the crown, others who want it and will cherish it. I found something more valuable here. I found peace. I found love. I found myself again, not as a princess but as a person." She looked down at Lucas, and he saw the certainty in her eyes. "If you want the crown back, mother, I will tell you where it is hidden. You can give it to whoever the clan chooses to lead. But I am staying here with my husband and building the life we started together." Lucas wanted to tell her it was all right, that he would understand if she chose her people over him. But the words stuck in his throat because he did not want her to go. He wanted her to stay with him forever, selfish as that might be. Talia's mother looked between them for a long moment, then she sighed. "You are certain?" she asked her daughter. "I have never been more certain of anything," Talia said. The older woman nodded slowly. "Then I respect your choice, though it breaks my heart. But first, let us get your husband some medical attention before he bleeds to death on his own porch." The next hour passed in a blur of activity. Talia's mother, whose name Lucas learned was Mira, sent most of the riders back with the captured cousin and his mercenaries. She kept two behind to help, and they proved surprisingly gentle as they extracted the crossbow bolt from Lucas's shoulder and stitched the wound with practiced efficiency. "You will heal," Mira told him as she bandaged the injury herself, her strong hand surprisingly gentle. "You are lucky. Another inch to the right and the bolt would have pierced your lung." "Lucky is my middle name," Lucas managed through gritted teeth. Mira studied him with those sharp eyes that were so like her daughter's. "You love her," she said. "It was not a question." "With everything I have," Lucas confirmed. "And you will protect her, stand beside her, even though it means giving up any chance of a normal, safe life." "There is nothing normal about me, and safe is overrated," Lucas said. "Besides, I did not marry her for safety. I married her because I cannot imagine my life without her in it." Mira was quiet for a moment, then she smiled. It softened her entire face, making her look years younger. "You are a good man, Lucas Vance. I am glad my daughter found you." She finished the bandaging and stood, brushing off her hands. Talia hovered nearby, her expression torn between relief and lingering fear. "Come," Mira said to her daughter. "Walk with me." They went outside, leaving Lucas resting on his bed with strict orders not to move. He could see them through the window, mother and daughter standing in the yard having what looked like an intense conversation. He could not hear the words, but he saw Talia's shoulders shake, saw Mira pull her into a fierce embrace. They stood like that for a long time, and Lucas felt his chest tighten with emotion. Whatever was being said out there, whatever wounds were being healed, it was important. He was glad Talia was getting this chance to reconcile with her mother, even if it meant she might change her mind about staying. When they finally came back inside, both had red-rimmed eyes but calmer expressions. Mira approached Lucas with the bearing of a queen addressing a valued subject. "My daughter has told me where the crown is hidden," she said. "I will retrieve it and return it to the clan. In exchange, I am officially recognizing your marriage and granting you both my blessing. You will be under the protection of the Thornwood clan, should you ever need it." "That is generous," Lucas said, genuinely touched. "It is the least I can do," Mira replied. "I failed my daughter once, I will not fail her again." She looked at Talia with fierce love. "Visit when you can, and know that you will always have a home with the clan should you ever wish to return." "Thank you, Mother," Talia said quietly. They retrieved the crown from the old well, and Lucas got his first real look at it in the afternoon light. It was beautiful and terrible, wrought from silver and adorned with emeralds that seemed to glow with inner light. Ancient runes covered every surface, promising power and binding the wearer to duty. Mira held it with reverence, then wrapped it carefully in oiled cloth. "The clan will choose a new leader," she said. "Someone who wants this burden and will bear it honorably. You are free, Talia. Free to live as you choose." She mounted her horse, her remaining guards falling in behind her. As they rode away, she looked back once, raising her hand in farewell. Talia waved back, tears streaming down her face, but her other hand was firmly clasped in Lucas's. They stood together watching until the riders disappeared from view, then Talia turned and buried her face in Lucas's chest, careful of his injured shoulder. "I thought I would regret it," she said through tears. "Giving up the crown, but I do not. Is that terrible?" "No," Lucas said, holding her close. "It is human, or orc, or whatever you want to call it. You chose happiness over duty, love over power. There is nothing terrible about that." "I chose you," Talia said, looking up at him with those amber eyes that had captured his heart from the first moment. "I will always choose you." "And I will always choose you right back," Lucas promised. The months that followed were the happiest of Lucas's life. His shoulder healed slowly but surely, and Talia nursed him through it with a devotion that humbled him. She proved to be a natural farmer, taking to the work with enthusiasm that sometimes made him laugh. She sang while she milked the cows, ancient orc songs that were both beautiful and haunting. She fought off the occasional fox or coyote with a ferocity that protected their chickens better than any fence. And at night, they lay together in their bed and talked about everything and nothing. Plans for expanding the farm, memories from their pasts, dreams for their future. Talia wanted to build a larger barn and maybe get some sheep. Lucas wanted to plant an orchard, something that would take years to mature but would feed them for decades. They were building something together. Not a kingdom or a legacy, but a life. Simple and honest and theirs. Winter came and brought snow that blanketed the farm in white silence. They spent the long evenings by the fire, Lucas reading aloud from his small collection of books while Talia worked on knitting projects with yarn she had spun herself. She was terrible at knitting, her strong hands better suited to weapons than needles, but she persisted with stubborn determination that Lucas found endearing. "This is supposed to be a scarf," she announced one evening, holding up something that looked more like a misshapen snake. "It is a very nice. Whatever it is," Lucas said diplomatically. Talia threw a ball of yarn at his head and he caught it laughing. She tackled him on the couch, careful of his still healing shoulder, and they wrestled like children until they collapsed in a tangle of limbs, breathless and happy. "I love you," Lucas said, looking at her flushed face and bright eyes. "I love you too," Talia replied. "Even when you make fun of my knitting." "Especially when I make fun of your knitting," Lucas corrected. Spring arrived with the promise of new beginnings. They planted the garden together, Lucas teaching Talia the difference between vegetable seedlings and weeds. She learned quickly, as she did with everything, her royal education apparently including agriculture alongside warfare and diplomacy. On a warm afternoon in late spring, as they were planting tomatoes, Talia suddenly went very still. "Lucas," she said quietly, "I need to tell you something." He looked up, alarmed by her tone. "What is wrong?" "Nothing is wrong," she said, and a slow smile spread across her face. "I think I am pregnant." Lucas froze, a tomato seedling dangling from his fingers. "You think I am late," Talia explained. "And I have been feeling strange in the mornings. Not sick exactly, but different. And my mother said that when she was carrying me, she craved wild berries constantly. I have been craving them too." Lucas set down the seedling very carefully, then pulled Talia into his arms. "We are going to have a baby," he said, testing the words out. "We are going to have a baby," Talia confirmed, and she was crying now, happy tears that dampened his shirt. Lucas held her tightly, his own eyes stinging with emotion. He had not thought about children, too focused on surviving day to day to plan that far ahead. But now, with Talia in his arms and the future stretching out before them, he could imagine it. A child with her strength and his stubbornness, raised on this farm with love and laughter and the freedom to be whoever they wanted to be. "Are you happy?" Talia asked, pulling back to look at his face. "I am terrified," Lucas admitted. "And I am happier than I have ever been in my entire life." She kissed him then, deep and tender, and he tasted salt from her tears and sweetness from the wild berries she had been eating. When they broke apart, the sun was setting in a blaze of orange and gold, painting the world in warm colors. "We are going to need a bigger house," Lucas said, looking at their small farmhouse with new eyes. "And more chickens," Talia added. "Children need lots of eggs, and maybe a goat," Lucas suggested, "for milk and cheese." They stood there in their garden, planning and dreaming, while the spring evening settled around them like a blessing. Lucas thought about the man he had been a year ago, alone and empty, convinced that his life would be nothing but quiet routine until he died. He thought about the scared, injured woman he had found in his potato field, desperate and hunted, and he thought about all the small choices that had led them to this moment. His decision to help instead of hide, her decision to trust instead of run. their decision to marry for protection and then stay for love. None of it had been easy, and some of it had been terrifying, but all of it had been worth it. Summer came in full force, bringing long days of hard work and longer evenings of rest. Talia's pregnancy progressed, her belly swelling with new life while she stubbornly insisted on continuing to help with the farm work. Lucas finally put his foot down when he found her trying to lift a full water barrel. "You are carrying our child," he said firmly. "Let me carry the water." "I am pregnant, not broken," Talia protested, but she stepped back. "I know," Lucas said more gently. "But let me take care of you both, please." She softened at that, reaching up to cup his face. "You take very good care of us already, but fine. You can carry the heavy things. I will focus on telling you what to do." "You already do that," Lucas pointed out. "And you love it," Talia said with a grin. "I really do," he admitted. They built an addition to the house that summer, a room for the baby with windows that looked out over the garden. Lucas carved animals into the windowsill, while Talia made curtains from cloth she had traded eggs for in the village. They argued good-naturedly about colors and furniture placement, building not just a room but a future. The village had mostly accepted their unusual marriage by now, helped by Father Morris, who made it clear that anyone who had a problem with Lucas's orc wife would have to answer to the church. A few families had even become friendly, stopping by to trade goods or share news. Lucas knew there were still those who disapproved, who muttered about the mixing of races and the unnaturalness of it all. But he did not care. Let them mutter. He had everything he needed right here. On a hot August afternoon, Talia went into labor. Lucas had delivered calves and helped birth foals, but this was entirely different. This was his wife, his love, bringing their child into the world with fierce determination, and more pain than he wished he could take from her. He held her hand and brought her water and tried not to panic while she breathed through contractions that seemed to last forever. "You are doing amazing," he kept saying, over and over like a prayer. "I am going to kill you for this," Talia panted between contractions. "That is fair," Lucas agreed. The midwife from the village, an older woman named Meredith who had seen it all and feared nothing, directed operations with calm efficiency. She had hesitated when Lucas first approached her about helping with the birth, unsure about delivering a half-orc baby. But Lucas's desperation and Talia's dignity had won her over, and now she worked with focused intensity. "Almost there," Meredith said. "One more big push." Talia bore down with a roar that shook the rafters, and suddenly there was a new sound in the room. A baby's cry, loud and strong and absolutely perfect. "It is a girl," Meredith announced, wrapping the squalling infant in clean cloth. "Healthy lungs on this one." She placed the baby in Talia's arms, and Lucas watched his wife's face transform with wonder. The baby had green-tinted skin, lighter than Talia's but darker than any human, with a dusting of dark hair and tiny ears that came to slight points. Her eyes, when she opened them, were blue like Lucas's. "She is beautiful," Talia whispered. "She is perfect," Lucas agreed, reaching out to touch one tiny fist. His daughter wrapped her fingers around his thumb with surprising strength, and he felt his heart crack open with love so intense it was almost painful. "What will you name her?" Meredith asked as she cleaned up. Lucas and Talia looked at each other, having discussed this at length over the past months. "Lily," Talia said, "after Lucas's mother." "Lily Vance," Lucas said, testing it out. "Welcome to the world, little one." Lily responded by yawning and snuggling closer to her mother, and Lucas felt tears streaming down his face. He had thought he understood happiness. He had thought loving Talia was the peak of what his heart could hold. But this, holding his wife and daughter in the golden afternoon light, was something beyond happiness. This was joy in its purest form. The first months of parenthood were exhausting and exhilarating in equal measure. Lily proved to have her mother's stubborn determination and her father's curiosity, a combination that meant she rarely slept when they wanted her to. But every midnight feeding, every diaper change, every moment of sleep-deprived delirium was worth it for the smile she gave them or the way she reached for their faces with chubby hands. "She has your eyes," Talia said one morning as they watched Lily discover her own feet. "She has your strength," Lucas replied. "Look at how she holds herself up." "She has both of us," Talia said, leaning against him. "The best of both worlds." Lucas wrapped his arm around her shoulders, thinking about how true that was. Lily would grow up in a world that might not always accept her, caught between human and orc with no pure claim to either heritage. But she would also grow up with love and acceptance, taught that her mixed blood was not a weakness but a bridge between two worlds. "We should write to your mother," Lucas said. "Let her know she has a granddaughter." Talia nodded. "I will do it today. She would want to meet Lily." True to her word, Talia wrote a letter that afternoon, carefully forming words on precious paper. A week later, a rider arrived with a response. Mira would visit in the autumn, after the harvest, and she was bringing gifts for her granddaughter. The thought of seeing her mother again made Talia both nervous and excited. They had exchanged letters over the past year, rebuilding their relationship slowly through written words. But this would be the first time they had seen each other since that day Mira retrieved the crown. "What if she thinks I made the wrong choice?" Talia asked Lucas one evening as they prepared for bed. "Then she is wrong," Lucas said simply. "Look at our life, Talia. Look at our daughter." "How could any of this be wrong?" Talia smiled, but he could see the old fear still lingering. "I gave up a crown for this. And you gained a family," Lucas pointed out. "A real one built on love instead of duty." He was right, and they both knew it. When Mira arrived in October with her guards and her gifts, she took one look at Talia holding Lily, and her face crumpled with emotion. "Oh, my daughter," she said, pulling Talia into a careful embrace that included the baby. "You look so happy." "I am," Talia said, and there was no hesitation in her voice. "I really am." Mira stayed for a week, doting on her granddaughter and helping around the farm with a vigor that surprised Lucas. She was tougher than she looked, able to work alongside him in the fields while sharing stories about Talia's childhood that made his wife blush. She once tried to train a wild boar as a pet, Mira told him one afternoon as they repaired a fence. "Kept it in her room for 3 days before it destroyed her bed and we had to release it." "I was 8, Talia protested from where she sat nearby with Lily. "And he was very cute." "He was very destructive," Mira corrected, but she was smiling. On Mira's last day, she pulled Lucas aside while Talia was putting Lily down for a nap. "Thank you," she said simply, "for loving my daughter, for giving her the life she deserved." "I should be thanking you," Lucas said, "for raising someone so incredible, for giving me your blessing." "For not killing me when you had the chance." Mira laughed. "I considered it," she admitted, "when I first arrived and saw you bleeding on your porch, but then I saw how Talia looked at you and I knew you were the one she had been waiting for, even if neither of you realized it at the time." "I am going to protect them both," Lucas promised, "with everything I have." "I know you will," Mira said. "You already have." She rode away the next morning, but this time there were no tears. Just waves and promises to visit again in the spring, and the knowledge that the wounds between mother and daughter had finally healed. The years flowed by like water, each season bringing its own joys and challenges. Lily grew into a bright, inquisitive child with her mother's determination and her father's gentle heart. She helped in the garden as soon as she could walk, learned to milk the cows before she turned 5, and showed an early talent for tracking that made Talia beam with pride. The farm prospered under their combined efforts. Lucas's orchard began producing fruit, sweet apples and pears that they sold in the village market. Talia's sheep provided wool that she spun and dyed, creating beautiful yarn that commanded good prices. They were not wealthy, but they were comfortable, and more importantly, they were happy. When Lily turned 7, Talia began teaching her to fight. Nothing too intense, just basic self-defense and the foundations of warrior training. Lucas watched them practice in the yard, wooden swords clacking together while Talia offered patient corrections. "You are a natural," Talia told their daughter after a particularly good session. "Better than I was at your age." "Really?" Lily's whole face lit up. "Really," Talia confirmed. "But remember, strength is not just about fighting. It is about knowing when to fight and when to show mercy." "Like Papa did," Lily said, "when he saved you instead of turning you away." Talia met Lucas's eyes across the yard, and the love there was so intense it made his breath catch. "Exactly like your papa," she said softly. That night, after Lily was asleep and they were curled together in bed, Talia traced patterns on Lucas's chest. "Do you ever regret it?" she asked quietly. "The quiet life you had before I showed up?" "Not for 1 second," Lucas said honestly. "That was not a life. It was just existence. This, with you and Lily, this is living." "I used to dream about being queen," Talia admitted. "About ruling wisely and making my parents proud, but I never dreamed about being happy. I did not think I was allowed to want that." "And now?" Lucas asked. "Now I dream about watching Lily grow up," Talia said. "About growing old with you. About all the small, ordinary miracles that make up a life. Those dreams are so much better than a crown ever was." Lucas kissed her forehead, pulling her closer. Outside their window, the night was full of cricket song and the whisper of wind through the orchard trees. Inside, their daughter slept peacefully in her room, safe and loved and free to become whoever she wanted to be. This was what they had built together. Not a kingdom or a legacy carved in stone, but something far more precious. A home, a family, a love that had started in desperation and grown into something unshakable. Years later, when Lucas was older and his hair had started to gray, he would sit on the porch with Talia and watch the sun set over their land. Lily would be grown by then, strong and beautiful and wise, training to be the village healer with the same dedication she brought to everything. And Lucas would think about the woman he had found in his potato field all those years ago, desperate and hunted and hiding a crown in her past. He would think about how that crown had found her eventually, bringing danger and decisions. How she had chosen love over power, a simple farm over a throne, a human man over everything she had been raised to value. And he would take her hand, scarred and work-worn but still strong, and he would know that they had made the right choice. Every single time they chose each other, it was the right choice. "What are you thinking about?" Talia would ask, her amber eyes still bright despite the years. "Everything," Lucas would say. "How lucky I am. How grateful I am that you stumbled into my field that day." "I did not stumble," Talia would protest with mock indignation. "I strategically positioned myself in the most defensible location." "You were passed out between my potato plants," Lucas would remind her, laughing. "Details." Talia would wave this away. "The important thing is that you found me. That you saved me." "We saved each other," Lucas would correct, because it was true. She had needed protection and a home, but he had needed purpose and love. They had filled the empty spaces in each other's lives and created something beautiful in the process. But that was all in the future. For now, on this particular evening with Lily 8 years old and their life settled into comfortable rhythm, they simply existed in their happiness. The farm needed tending, The animals needed feeding, and there would always be work to do. But there would also always be this. The three of them together, bound by love and choice and the stubborn determination to protect what they had built. When winter came again, bringing snow and long nights, they gathered around the fireplace as a family. Lucas would read stories while Talia worked on her eternal knitting projects that never quite turned out right. Lily would practice her letters or draw pictures of the farm, always including all three of them together. "Tell me the story again," Lily would say, as she did most nights. "About how you and Mama met." And Lucas would tell her about the woman in the potato field and the crown she buried, and the choice they made to build something together. He would edit out the violence and the fear, keeping the story light and suitable for young ears. But the heart of it remained true. Two people from different worlds who found each other when they needed it most. And they lived happily ever after, Lily would say when the story ended, because she had heard it so many times she knew all the words. "We did," Talia would agree, smiling at Lucas over their daughter's head. "We really did. And it was true. Not in the fairy tale way where everything was perfect and easy, but in the real way that mattered. They had each other. They had their daughter. They had their farm and their animals and the life they had carved out of nothing but determination and love. The crown that Talia had buried in the old well was long gone, returned to her clan, and placed on the head of a cousin who wore it with honor. The threat that had driven her to Lucas's door had been defeated. The wounds of their pasts had healed into scars that they wore with pride rather than shame. What remained was this: the crackle of the fire and the warmth of home. The sound of their daughter's laughter and the feel of Talia's hand in his. The knowledge that tomorrow they would wake up and do it all again, and the day after that, and the day after that. Building their life one small moment at a time. Lucas had never ruled a kingdom or won a war or done anything that would make it into history books. But he had loved an orc princess who gave up her crown for a chance at happiness. He had raised a daughter who would grow up knowing that love was stronger than prejudice. That family was what you made it. And that home was not a place, but the people you chose to stand beside. That was his legacy. That was what he had built with Talia. Starting from that day, she appeared in his potato field with a crown in her past and terror in her eyes. The day it found her had changed everything, but not in the way anyone might have expected. It had not brought death or destruction or the end of their fragile peace. Instead, it had brought resolution. It had brought healing. It had proven that the choice they made together to build a life based on love rather than duty was the right one. And as Lucas sat there in his farmhouse with his family around him and years of happiness stretching behind and ahead, he knew that he would make that same choice again. Every single time. Because this, right here, was worth more than all the crowns in all the kingdoms in the world. Talia leaned against him, warm and solid and real, and he wrapped his arm around her shoulders. Lily dozed between them, her head on her mother's lap, dreaming whatever dreams filled the minds of happy children. Outside, the snow continued to fall, blanketing their farm in white silence. The animals were secure in the barn. The garden lay dormant, waiting for spring. Everything was as it should be. "I love you," Talia whispered, so quietly that only he could hear. "I love you too," Lucas whispered back. "Always." And that was the truth that held their world together. Not grand gestures or dramatic declarations, but quiet moments of certainty. The knowledge that whatever came, they would face it together. That whatever they built, they would build it side by side. The crown had found her, yes. But what it had truly found was two people who were brave enough to choose each other over everything else. And in doing so, they had created something far more valuable than any kingdom. They had created a home, a family, a love that would last for all the days of their lives and beyond. That was their happily ever after. Not perfect, but real. Not easy, but worth fighting for. Not the ending anyone might have predicted when a desperate orc woman stumbled into a lonely farmer's field, but exactly the ending they both deserved. And so they lived, in their farmhouse in the foothills, raising their daughter and tending their land and loving each other with the fierce devotion of people who knew how precious their happiness was. The world continued to turn, seasons came and went, and through it all they remained, together. Unshakable. Home. Years would pass, and Lily would grow into a remarkable woman, her mixed heritage making her a bridge between human and orc communities. She would fall in love herself, with a kind young man from the village who saw her strength as beautiful rather than frightening. They would marry in the same chapel where Lucas and Talia had spoken their vows, with Father Morris presiding and tears in everyone's eyes. And when Lily asked her parents how they had made their marriage work despite all the obstacles, despite the differences and the prejudice and the danger, Talia would take Lucas's hand and answer simply. "We chose each other," she would say. "Every single day, we chose each other." And that made all the difference. It was the truth that had guided them from that first desperate morning to this moment of joy. It was the foundation they had built everything else upon. And it was the lesson they passed on to their daughter, who would pass it on to her children, creating a legacy far more valuable than any crown could ever be. A legacy of love that crossed boundaries and defied expectations. A legacy of courage that chose hope over fear, connection over isolation, partnership over power. A legacy that started with a woman hiding a crown in her past, and the man who helped her forge a future instead. The sun set on their farm, painting the sky in colors of orange and gold and deep purple. Inside the house, the family gathered for dinner, sharing food and stories and laughter. Outside, the world spun on, full of conflict and change and uncertainty. But here in this small farmhouse in the foothills, there was peace. There was love. There was everything that truly mattered, held together by the simple but profound choice to build a life together. And that, Lucas thought as he looked around the table at the people he loved most in the world, was the greatest treasure of all. Not a crown of silver and emeralds, but a crown of ordinary moments transformed into extraordinary happiness by the alchemy of love and commitment. Talia caught his eye and smiled, understanding passing between them without words. They had done it. Against all odds, against all expectations, they had built something beautiful and lasting. They had turned a desperate meeting in a potato field into a lifetime of partnership and joy. The crown in Talia's past had found her, yes. And it had changed everything, but not by reclaiming her or destroying their peace. It had changed everything by giving them a chance to prove what they already knew, that they were stronger together than apart. That love was worth fighting for. That home was not where you came from, but who you built it with. As darkness fell and the stars came out one by one, Lucas pulled Talia close and breathed in the familiar scent of her hair. Their daughter was safe and happy. Their home was secure. Their love was unshakable. Everything else was just details. This right here was what mattered, and it would matter tomorrow and the next day and all the days after that. For the rest of their lives they would have this certainty, this peace, this love. And that was the truest happily ever after anyone could ask for.